My name is Michelle Waters. I'm an adult nurse lecturer here at the University of the West of Scotland, and I'm teaching the pre-registration nursing programme in Year 2. It was through a colleague who had said that he was using Xerte, and it was just another way of teaching. So I thought, well, that looks interesting, because I wanted just to start to move away from PowerPoints and use scenarios, but just if there was something else that I could use and look at, I was interested in doing that. So I then started to look at Xerte, the application of Xerte. I had no formal training, but we do have the Centre for Academic and Learning Development and e-learners who support the academic staff, so I approach members of staff within that team, and they started to then show me how to use Xerte, the principles. But really, it was more about me finding the time to sit down and look through it myself, really. That's what was really important. Trying to just skip through Xerte is not very useful. You do need to allocate some time. I allocated a day where I sat down and just really looked at Xerte, and then the aspects I couldn't understand, any questions, I then wrote down to go back to the team, and I felt that was a good way for me to learn. I think it's difficult if you just think somebody can teach you, show you Xerte and you can just use it. I think you have to sit down and spend the time yourself, looking at the aspects you can understand, in their questions, and then follow that up. And that's really how I learnt to use Xerte. Yeah, we have a module, Applied Skills, where the students are going to undertake learn in Year 2 Pacific clinical skills. And so they do go into what we have a skills ward, which is really a mock ward. And so just before they undertake any skills, we want them to have knowledge and understanding. And so that's why I looked at Xerte. I thought that would help before they come into the skills lab to understand, develop some knowledge and the theory base. And it was around nutrition through the lifespan. And then once the students were expected and were told that they had to undertake the Xerte presentation to develop their knowledge and understanding, because if they didn't, they then couldn't undertake the activities in the skills ward. So it was linked. It wasn't just all theory necessarily. So then it was followed through, and we actually had scenarios that then tested that knowledge and understanding in the skills ward as a practical session. I think what I could do is to break down the aspect of looking at nutrition through the lifespan in a simple format for the students to undertake in relation in testing their knowledge, but in different activities, interactivity, different aspects like hotspots, finding information. For example, if we're looking at proteins, which foods contain proteins, and they could then highlight that and then get some feedback. So using podcasts, different hotspots. The interactivity I mainly used within the Xerte presentation, but there is quite a diverse choice, but that's how I had used Xerte. I think I was worried if it was over. I had to break down the different activities really simply so the students could use. And not only that, as a profession, I could locate them, put hyperlinks on for the students to use, and I was then hoping that when they come to do assignments or do other modules, that they could go back to those hyperlinks, professional links, and have access and use them. There's specific maybe government documents I want them to look at that I can make. Then they've got the hyperlinks and they've got them to use. I think if you could link in with somebody who's used Xerte before, who could just show you how to use it basically, but then you need to spend the time yourself just going through, but you do need like a mentor. That's what I would suggest, you'd need a mentor with Xerte. It took me a while for the light bulb moment to come on to use it, and the other important thing is preparation. Once I understood what Xerte, then when I was planning what I wanted to do, I did use a mind map, then insert it into Xerte. So before actually using Xerte, I used actually a mind map. I made a mind map of how I was getting, different aspects. I started like from, we were doing nutrition preconception right through, but I did that as a mind map and then applied it into Xerte. Most definitely you have to plan your presentation, how you're going to do. And then you can look at Xerte, the different inserts as to what fits in where. But I would suggest, if you could have a mentor, but importantly, to plan your presentation before using Xerte, putting it into Xerte.
I'm Neil McPherson. I'm a lecturer in sociology, but I'm also the learning teaching lead for the School of Social Sciences at the University of rsc-scotland. Well, I heard about Xerte through colleagues a number of years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but I liked the idea of the Xerte learning object before I actually saw one. I thought the idea and the pedagogy behind it was really interesting. So I actually attended a Jisc rsc event in Glasgow, where I learned to actually build the Xerte, and I just took it from there, and then I'm pretty much self-taught after that. Well, at the moment, the way I've used Xerte in the past is just as a learning and teaching tool. So what I've done in the past is I've built, for example, a Xerte object on critical thinking. It's an interactive object where students work from the start through the finish, get some videos, some multiple choice quizzes, pull some stuff also into from the Palgrave resources and study skills, which we've got permission from Palgrave to do, and build a sort of interactive object that students can work through in terms of getting them to think critically about reflective learning and critical thinking in particular. We've also used it for a class that we're just about to run on data visualization and showing students how we go about visualizing data in a number of different forms. However, the big project we have on at the moment that I think is quite exciting is that we have student ambassadors who are going to be working with Xerte. They're going to firstly identify what skills they require to be able to build Xertes themselves. Then there are going to be two groups, three in each group. They're going to create employability Xertes. So Xertes that look at some of the data in relation to employability, look at the employability agenda, consider the employability agenda from a social science perspective, take a critical look at the neoliberalist agenda in terms of employability. So what we're basically trying to do is get students to develop their understanding of employability from a critical perspective, while at the same time developing employability skills which will serve them well. Those students will then go on to support other students in the level 9 third year class who are going to be creating Xertes as part of the assessment regime in that module, and that module is going to be looking at the way in which we deal with secondary data, we analyse secondary data. Students will be doing a short project and we'll be presenting the results of that project on a Xerte learning object. So the reason we're training ambassadors is so they can support that process moving forward. I think Xerte is another tool in the toolbox that educators use, although I think it's a very powerful one, and the reason I like it is because of its the potential for it to be interactive. I also like the fact that you can capture within the one object a variety of different types of learning tools. So we can have video, we can have audio, we can also have multiple choice quizzes, and I think that's really important. So we can build a reflective approach to learning into the actual object itself. We can also then transfer those objects very easily. We can share those objects very easily. We can embed them in the virtual learning environments. We can use, for example, critical thinking learning object. So an object that students will benefit from at level 7, 8, 9, 10, and at master's level. So I think the portability the ability to capture different types of media, and the fact that it can be interactive are the key things that sells Xerte to me. I think if you're new to anything, the best place to start is having a look at some samples of people's work using Xerte. The thing I like about Xerte is it's very, very straightforward to use. If you have even the slightest understanding of how electronic technology is used, you'll be able to build a Xerte. It's not a high level of qualification required to actually engage with the tool. So I think looking at some people's examples of people's work, and then just sitting down and messing about it and learning in that way, I think it's very much a hands-on tool, and I think that what you have to do is just to try and embed some audio, try and embed some video, set up some multiple choice quizzes, and just play about in the Xerte sandbox for a while. But I mean, I think in reality, if you spend a couple of hours doing that, then you're well on your way to producing your first learning object.